Welcome to Passion Inspires. Join us as we explore the world of marketing and design and share insights and stories that spark inspiration and drive meaningful change. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Jeff Terpstra, president of Scott Allen Creative. And today I want to talk about a trip to Africa. Last summer, Jeff Johnson, president of International Needs, asked if I would take a trip to Nairobi, Kenya, to visit one of their partners. And when he first asked, I really hesitated to respond with a resounding yes. I felt a little fearful. It had been since 1983 since I was in Africa. And at that time, I got deadly sick from food poisoning and was sick for 3 days, felt like I was going to die, thankfully did not. But another friend of mine who was there, 30 years old, he died of malaria. And then just after Jeff had asked me, I heard about a couple of U.S. citizens who were killed in a car accident in Nairobi. And quite honestly, now that I'm a father of 11 with 18 grandchildren, I feel like I have less faith than I did when I was 23 years old and just took off for Africa with no fear in my heart whatsoever. But when my wife found out, she was so excited. She said, Jeff, you have to go. Catherine had also been to Africa when she was 25 years old, and she actually had been in Nairobi when she was 25 years old. And she had worked with Hospital Christian Fellowship for the summer right after her junior year of college. And that was a year before we got married. So we had both been to Africa as single people and had not been back there since we started our family. I finally was convinced, between the loving persuasion of my wife and Jeff Johnson's encouragement, to say a big yes and take that trip. Our assignment was to visit with Reverend Dr. Judy Mugawa, and she was the founder and CEO of Home Care Spiritual Fellowship. And Dr. Judy is 77 years old. And she actually has quite an amazing background. She had a background in finance, came from kind of a ruling tribe in Nairobi, where that tribe is kind of a tribe of wealth and influence in Nairobi. And so she grew up in quite a wealthy background. When we visited her home, it was a gorgeous home, much larger than mine, so beautiful. And Dr. Judy had great financial success, and actually she was assistant to the Minister of Finance for the government of Kenya. After Dr. Judy retired, she had a job offer to be the CEO of Pan-Africa Christian Women's Alliance, and that alliance was set up to encourage and strengthen and empower women throughout Africa, and she was assigned to grow that organization, and she worked there for 21 years. And through her influence and travel all over Africa, she established that organization in 30 different countries. So Judy retired a second time. And after her retirement, she felt that God was calling her back to Home Care Spiritual Fellowship to lead the organization once again. And her big goal in coming back out of retirement was to build a facility that would house 1,000 children for their Bible clubs. Well, my job was to go there and take photos of the work of the Bible clubs and other work that they have in the Kibera Slums in Nairobi, and take video, photography. And so, I'm not really the photo video expert like other team members, but I felt like, okay, what can I do? So I brought my great camera and told my wife, I want you to also shoot all day long on your iPhone. So I bought my wife a Steadicam for her iPhone. So for 8 or 10 hours a day, her and I were both taking photos and videos all day long. Sometimes together, sometimes we would separate and shoot at 2 different locations. But it was just so much fun to empower her to be able to do that, and she enjoyed that so much. I just want to tell you a little bit about what I walked away with from my trip to Africa. First of all, I want to just kind of give you a background to Reverend Judy's calling with Home Care Spiritual Fellowship. It all began 40 years ago when Reverend Judy began kind of a small prayer group among women. And through that prayer group, as they were gathering together, some of the mothers from Kibera came to visit them asking for food. The women that came to visit were dying of HIV/AIDS. And in that culture at that time, if women had AIDS, they were ostracized from their family and set apart. They were blamed for that disease. And so the women and whoever children that they had with them, they would be pushed away from the family. And many of these families were literally starving. Among the women that came to Judy were these first 4 women, and Margaret and Elizabeth were both dying. When they were in the hospital, they called for Dr. Judy to come to the hospital. And Margaret asked Dr. Judy, "Can you please buy a coffin for me? I don't want to be thrown into the trash pits area." They would normally just wrap a body in paper and throw them in the pit area if they were dying of AIDS. "Can you please buy me a coffin?" Margaret asked, "so that I can be buried." Well, Reverend Judy, for her, that relationship with Margaret and Elizabeth and these other women were the beginning of a lifelong passion. This was 40 years ago, a lifelong passion for the people of Kibera. Now remember, Dr. Judy came from a family of wealth. She could have turned her eye and ignored these precious people, but she decided to give her life for them. And I saw such love in Dr. Judy, such love and passion for these women and for their children. I want to give you a little bit of background of the Kibera Slums. Dr. Judy shared with me that the Kibera Slums is the second largest slum in all of Africa. You imagine like a 2.5-mile square. For my home in Granville, you just go through 2 main lights and you've covered 2 miles. But within that 2.5-mile square resides at least 250,000, some people think as many as 500,000 people. To picture Kibera, I want you to picture going through a trash heap and trying to find materials to build some kind of structure that would protect you from the elements. But in that trash heap, the items are limited. You can only have pieces of metal, maybe some sticks and mud, some blocks, cement blocks. And from all those different materials that you're grabbing out of this trash heap, you have to create some kind of structure that would protect you from the outdoors. Well, you imagine structures like that, many of them 10 by 10 feet in size. Each of those that are all tied together are what they consider a home. And when you walk into one of these homes, it's literally all you see is different fabrics around you. And again, it's only 10 by 10. And it's barely enough room for them to separate kind of a space for the husband and the parents to sleep in. And then the rest of the space is for the children to sleep in. Often those spaces only had like a bench or 2, and children would either sleep on the bench or on the floor. In the first home that we visited in Kibera, that was a home for a family of 6 people. It was Samuel's home. And what struck me is that it didn't feel like a home. It was just a space. No running water, no kitchen, no bathroom. Every family in those structures, that live in those structures, they have to buy 10-gallon containers of water if they want drinking water. They have to pay to use a public bathroom, and they have to pay every time they want to take a shower. Just kind of imagine what it's like to go into the streets of Kibera. About 5 years ago, the government built these paved roads that are winding through the hills of Kibera. And those roads are noisy and busy, and there's traffic everywhere. People are walking along the roads. A lot of motorcycle taxis are driving, weaving in and out, going by at 35 miles an hour as people are all walking. And you think, how can people not get hit? And besides that, there's buses and cars. And along the edges of those paved roads are all these either storefront shops that, again, they're just made out of sticks and pieces of metal. And in between all these shops and storefronts are just these alleyways that are only about 4 feet wide. And as we took one of those alleyways, it's just dirt, and alongside is a stream of waste and running water and garbage. When you only have about 2 or 3 feet to walk, it's what they would consider almost like their sidewalks in between all their homes. And that is what the image that I have of Kibera. It was so amazing as we're walking through the streets and walking through some of those alleyways, how friendly and kind and cheerful the children were, always greeting us, waving at us, and just precious, adorable kids. On our first day visiting Kibera, we got to meet Samuel. They also gave us like a bodyguard, literally, because some of those areas in Kibera aren't safe. And then 1 or 2 of the home care staff were also walking with us. And before I could even get my camera out, Mark and Patty were greeting Samuel. And I wish I had that moment that I could have captured of them hugging each other. I wasn't really prepared for it, and I guess none of us were. We didn't know that Samuel was going to greet us out on the street, but he knew that we were coming to visit his home, so he decided to walk towards us. Samuel was born with a normal leg and a 21-inch leg with a foot on it. So he obviously has that physical disability that really limits some of the things that he can do. But several years ago, Mark and Patty decided to sponsor Samuel for high school. Kenya, you have to pay to go to school. So if the children's parents don't have any money, they don't go to school. And when Mark and Patty found out about Samuel, without hesitation, they decided to sponsor him through high school. And Samuel had just graduated. So Samuel was so excited to meet us. He walked with us the rest of the way to his home. We went into his home, and he introduced us to his parents and a couple of his siblings. Really, Samuel's story was a real tragic story. His mother had just gotten out of prison, and his dad is an alcoholic and doesn't work. And so Samuel has been very poor. And it's through the blessing of Mark and Patty that he was able to go to school as the oldest of all of his siblings. And just to see the joy that they had in meeting together and seeing each other, really even the love that they have for each other. We sat in Samuel's home for about 10 or 15 minutes. That gave Samuel's parents an opportunity to thank Mark and Patty for all that they've done for their family. Because when you give one child in a family hope, you really give the whole family hope. And we saw that in those parents' eyes, such gratitude. I just want to give a shout out to Dale and Dawn Day and to Mark and Patty Ismond. We were together on this trip for about 10 days, and we had lots of conversations, but no conversation was boring. No conversation was forced. It felt like we just enjoyed every minute together, both in the Kibera Slums and also in our safari for a couple of days. And I really appreciate both of those couples because I saw in them such genuine love for the people that they have sponsored. Both of them have sponsored children in Kibera for providing an education for them. And it was such a wonderful opportunity when Mark and Patty could meet Samuel, one of their sponsored high school students who just graduated. When Dale and Dawn could also meet, I believe his name was Franklin, who also had just graduated from high school. These are such precious people, and I so cherish the memories that we have together. It was so cool at one of the services, they asked Dale to play a saxophone, and it was so beautiful to hear him play along with the other instruments that were in the service together. During our first day at home care, we were able to go in some classrooms where women were learning dressmaking, and we were able to see the drawings that the teacher was making up on the chalkboard and taking notes about how to cut the dresses and how to sew the dresses together. And obviously they were creating skills for women so that they could provide for their families. And that's one aspect of home care, is really to empower people to be able to provide for themselves. Another aspect of home care is, like I shared earlier, is the sponsorship of kids in school. And so we visited several schools, and it was so beautiful entering a classroom. The children kind of learn more into the British system. So when a teacher says something, they'll all repeat it out loud. And so you have this great energy from the kids, the excitement of visiting us, knowing that we're visitors from the United States. And we each had a chance to tell a little bit about ourselves and why we were there. There was one of the classrooms that was just amazing. After one of us would share our personal story for a minute, they would all clap and shout. And it was just like, wow, that was amazing, you know. And it seems like almost everywhere we went that the children that we saw just greeted us with joy and kindness. And it just kind of blew my mind a little bit that here in the United States, we have so much depression, so much anxiety. And here these children barely have enough to eat. And, you know, they don't have a whole wardrobe of clothes. They might have one uniform that they wear to school every day. And yet they seemed happier. I don't know how that works, but that is one thing that did strike me as they were greeting me, raising up their hands to fist bump me or give me a high five, just greeting me with joy, and all the other team members as well. Those are moments that I really cherish. One of our assignments was to take photos and video of the Bible clubs that Home Care has started that take in children in the Kibera Slums on a Saturday. You can just see the children streaming in to the building where the Bible club is going to take place, and they're all so excited. And it's really beautiful because in the morning they feed the children porridge, and then they have a few hours of teaching and singing and worship and teaching them about the Bible and about how much God loves them. And one of the things that really struck me with the teachers in these Bible clubs, just how they were empowering these children with belief that they are loved, that they are valuable, that they are cared for. And just to see that light in their eyes of receiving those kinds of truthful ideas for them and give them hope and encouragement. For some of the children, that may be one of the very few meals that they receive all week long. So after they have their porridge in the morning, they have teaching for a few hours, then they'll also serve them a meal of rice and some other sauce and things like that. And I got a chance to interview one of the cooks, and he said that he was just so encouraged hearing the children singing, and he was listening to everything that they're learning. And because of him listening to the Bible club, he became a Christian. And it was just such a cool moment where, again, just the joy that he had in serving these kids. The Bible clubs really began out of Judy's relationship with the mothers. And what happened is that they realized that these women were dying of HIV/AIDS. Even though they had been given medication by the government, they were still dying. And they realized they were still dying because they didn't have enough food. And so when they came to Dr. Judy in the very beginning, she went to her friends and said, we need to do whatever it takes to start giving food for these women to help keep them alive. And the first 4 women grew to 40 women, and that grew to 100 women, and they just kept growing, and the need for food became greater. But at the time when they had about 40 women coming, they noticed that they weren't eating the food. And that made Dr. Judy mad. And she came to them and said, why are you not eating the food that we're giving you? We are giving this for you so you stay alive. And they said, "Oh, Dr. Judy, our children haven't had any food all week. And we take the food home to give it to our children." And she said, "Oh, I am so sorry that I got angry with you. I didn't realize that that's why you were doing that." And so she said, "We need to do something for these children." And that's really how the Bible Club started, that they brought these children in on a Saturday and would feed them 2 meals to make sure that at least one day they were all fed properly. It was so precious as I was filming some of these children eating their lunch, just seeing an older sister just caring for her younger sibling and making sure that she had enough to eat first. So my wife asked me the other day, "Jeff, if you could think of one thing that you walked away with from your trip to Africa, what would it be?" And that's a hard question, because we had 5 days with our friends in Nairobi, Kenya. We had 2.5 days on a safari, and then basically 3 or 4 days of travel back and forth. And of all those memories, I think the thing that struck me the most was the genuine love of the home care staff. And in our culture, we use the word love so loosely that it doesn't really have a lot of meaning. I love my pizza. I love that TV show. I love that song. One thing I love about the Greek language, at least they have 4 words for love. They have agape love, the love of God. They have a phileo love, the love that we have between each other as friends, the friendship love. And we have the love between a man and a woman. And then there's kind of another love that I'm forgetting right now. But at least they have 4 words for love. We only have 1, unfortunately. But what I saw in Dr. Judy, Helen, Monica, Edwin, and all the other staff that I can't remember all their names right now, I saw a genuine love. And this is what I mean by genuine love. Like Dr. Judy, she was wealthy. She was retired twice. She didn't need to do anything else with her life. She could have just sat back and relaxed. And at 77 years old, she's still leading this organization. She's still as passionate as ever. And she's giving her life for the love of these precious women and children. And now at this point, home care has been around long enough that children that came to these Bible clubs at 4 and 5 years old are now graduating from high school. Some are graduating from college, getting jobs in accounting and finance and in banks and just all different types of jobs. And one is getting a job in agriculture and wanting to help bring agriculture somehow to the Kibera slums. These are people whose lives have been rescued from abject poverty and given hope, food, encouragement, skills training, education, love, and compassion that I saw in Dr. Judy and her staff, of them giving of their life for others. On Sunday, Dr. Judy had like 50 people over at her house, and the whole afternoon was filled with food and singing, and Dr. Judy would orchestrate, the whole afternoon was orchestrated by her. And she would give praise to this person and let them talk for a while, then let another person talk about their life journey. And everything was about how each individual's life was changed through the love and care of home care. The other thing that struck me about Dr. Judy and her team is prayer and worship. And I was so humbled by this because I felt like there was such a genuine spirituality. People come from all different religions, but I saw a genuine love of God in Dr. Judy's heart that was so genuine and so pure and beautiful. She's also a woman of prayer, and I asked her about prayer, and she said, "Oh, Jeff, when my husband died a few years ago, and they had been married for 60 years, she said, I never would have continued to live without prayer. It really helped save me in the last few years of my life." I also asked Dr. Judy about partnership, because here in Hudsonville, is the home office of International Needs US. There's affiliates all over the world. But International Needs partners with Judy to help support the sponsorships of children, to help support the construction of a new facility that can house 1,000 children at a time, and help support the Bible clubs and all the work that they're doing in training women. We're really partners with them. And I asked her, Judy, what does partnership mean to you? And she said, well, a single tree, no matter how large it is, cannot make a forest. A forest is made of all different sizes of trees, all living together. And if we're on our own, we can never do what we're doing today. If International Needs were on their own, we couldn't do what Dr. Judy is doing. We could not replicate what she is doing. But when we come together, work together, care for each other, then the forest thrives. I'm so grateful that I went to Kenya. So grateful I didn't listen to my fearful thoughts and anxieties. And so grateful for the time there. I don't know if this is relevant or not, but I just want to share one more thing. I really didn't want to go on the safari, not because I didn't want to see these gorgeous, beautiful, amazing creatures, but because I just didn't want to spend so much money. It was quite expensive for 2 days, and I was really balking at the idea of going on the safari. Yet I'm so glad I did. The first day that I was there, and we took a plane out to the national park, and as we were driving through the winding roads up to the hotel, and I'm seeing before me as we're rising up on this hill, this amazing plain of rolling plain that just goes for miles and miles, and I just gasped. It was so gorgeous and so beautiful, so pristine, never touched by man really, except for that one road in that area and the hotel on top of the hill. You don't see people anywhere, obviously. And I was so grateful that I went there. It was such a contrast of experience to the slums of Kibera. We had Joseph was our a driver for the safari, and we got 4 trips with Joseph, and each trip was 3 hours each. And every trip he found different animals. And as we would, spend 3 hours with Joseph, going all different ways, different paths every day, out through the fields. When we came back, we would, yeah, you're the best driver ever, Joseph, you're the best. And we would clap for him and cheer him. One of the most exciting times was when at the very end, we saw this male elephant. And he was only like 50 feet away or so. And we weren't really fearful, but it was kind of a cool moment when he began charging us. I think he obviously wanted just to establish dominance, so Joseph backed up and we were all okay. But just to see those wonderful creatures, the very first time we went out, the very first half hour, we saw this male giraffe right alongside of the river where the hippos were bathing. And I just stood in awe of the beauty of that creature, knowing that they were in their natural habitat. He was bending over, eating leaves from the bushes and trees along the edge of the river. By the time we were on our last excursion, I felt like some of the memories I had as a little child. When I was a boy, we grew up by a field right next to our home, adjacent to our home, was a school playground, and then beyond that was our railroad tracks, and then there were these fields, and my younger brother Doug and I would go out there and spend hours and hours in these fields. And this was at a time when cowboys were really cool, so we would take sticks and make bows and arrows, and our own real bow and arrow, and we would shoot them and get better at them and all that, and it was just like this wonder of being out in creation as a kid. And we spent hours out there. I remember my dad would whistle at 5 o'clock for us to come back. They didn't know where we were. But the wonder that I had as a child of just looking at locusts and these little plants and, the beauty of flowers and all these things, those memories came back to me when we were on our fourth safari. I felt that fresh awe and wonder of God's creation again in a way that I hadn't felt since I was a child. So as these memories are starting to come back and flooding my soul, as we're driving, this was at a time when Joseph was just tearing down the path at probably 40 or 50 miles an hour, just trying to get to the next location. And so I stood up on my chair, and the Jeep has an opening on top. It has kind of a roof. But if you stand up on your chair, you can look out above the top, cab of the Jeep, and you can see a little bit further. And so I thought, I'm just going to stand up, put my camera down, and let the wind blow in my face. And it was at a time when the sun was setting. We had just seen that elephant that had just charged us. And it was just that moment of exhilaration and joy that I was so grateful that I was on that safari. Thank you, Jeff Johnson, for encouraging me to go to Africa, and to Catherine for also pushing me along to go to the safari. It was an amazing trip, a trip of a lifetime.